My name is Carla Davis, and I am the president of the Akron Press Club. It is so good to be here today in person. It's been almost 3 years since our last in-person State of the Schools luncheon. So we are thrilled today to return to an in-person forum and to present the superintendent of the Akron Public Schools. The Press Club was founded in 1971 to promote a free press and serve local journalists and public relations professionals. Now in its 52nd year, the mission continues. Your support for the Akron Press Club helps us to present programs that keep the community informed and engaged and provide scholarships for journalists and public relations students. So I have to make our commercial and give a pitch for membership because we're a membership organization. Please consider becoming a member of the Akron Press Club. And a side note, your membership will give you reciprocity to some nearby press clubs. If you ever want to attend a Cleveland Press Club event, your membership will allow you to do so. So please consider being a member. As we've said before, the Press Club has not been able to hold traditional programming during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our lunches fund scholarships for the students. But like many organizations, our revenues have felt the impact of COVID. And so that's why we're asking you to consider a donation to the Press Club to fund those scholarships. Between the Press Club and the John S. Knight Memorial Scholarship Fund, $50,000 were awarded to 10 local college communication students in 2022. That was just in 1 year alone. $50,000. Yes, thank you. And so you see, those scholarships make a difference to the students who receive them. And so to donate to the scholarship, go to our website, that's akronpressclub.org, and there you'll find an item with the headline, Help the Press Club Fund Scholarships. Click on that headline and you can find details on how to make a donation. I'd like at this time to thank some people who have contributed and supported the Akron Press Club. As I previously mentioned, we depend on revenue from our luncheons to fund those scholarships. So on behalf of the Press Club, we sincerely thank County Executive Eileen Shapiro for the generous donation to our club to support scholarships for students. As you may know, one of our scholarships is named for late County Executive Russ Pry. So there's another tie. We also would like to thank Dr. Eileen Thong and Elizabeth Bartz for their generous donations to support scholarships. And their support really has made the past 2 years without having our luncheons bearable. So we are very grateful. I'd like to just announce one of our upcoming programs. The Press Club will hear from longtime political consultant and author Jerry Austin right here in this room on December 14th. So go to our website to find out how to obtain tickets and to learn more. So now on to today's program. I'm going to introduce our superintendent. Superintendent Christine Fowler Mack. Born and raised in Akron and educated in Akron Public Schools, Superintendent Mack is an experienced school district leader whose first classroom experience was in the APS system. As a teacher at Robinson Elementary School from 1989 to 1995. Following that, she was a student dean and teacher leader for 2 years in APS. Named superintendent of the Akron Public Schools in 2021, she began her leadership of the 20,000 student system July 1st. With more than 4,100 teachers and staff, APS budget stands at more than $565 million. Between her first teaching position 32 years ago and her appointment as superintendent, her experiences in the field of education led her to raise student achievement and graduation rates dramatically and to increase community and parent engagement. Immediately before joining APS, she was responsible for overseeing school accountability, strategic planning and management, portfolio management, innovation, research and development, and community engagement functions as Chief Portfolio Officer at Cleveland Metropolitan School District. Before joining that school district, she served the Cleveland Heights University Heights School District as interim superintendent and assistant superintendent. In Kent City Schools, she served as a building principal at the elementary and middle levels. She earned her Bachelor of Science and her Master of Arts degrees from the University of Akron and her superintendent's license from Ashland University. She's on the board of Summit Education Initiative, the University of Akron Board of Trustees, Project Grad Akron, Greater Akron Chamber Board, and the board of United Way of Summit and Medina. She also is a Martha Holden Jennings Scholar and recipient of Summit County Leadership Academy's Emerging Leader Award. She was also named Akron Public Schools Coach of the Year and has been inducted into the East CLC Luther D. Smith Hall of Fame class of 2021-2022. She is a recipient of the Heights Association of Black School Educators Award, the Cleveland Heights University Heights Schools Educational Leadership Award, and the 2019 Northeast Ohio Women Living STEM in Education Award. Superintendent Fowler Mack was selected for membership in Chiefs for Change, a national nonprofit bipartisan network of diverse state and district education chiefs. She is also listed in Who's Who among educators and women in leadership. And because I have the mic, I can just say I'm a product of the Akron Public Schools, and our teams were rivals at one point because I attended a high school on the west side of Akron, and she attended East High School, and I will never forget a Turkey Day game. So that's all I have to say. Our moderator for today's program is Andrew Meyer, Deputy Editor of News and at IdeaStream Public Media, and he is an Akron Press Club board member. Andrew will moderate the program. He'll also explain the procedure for the question and answer portion of the program. So again, thank you for your time, your attendance today. We're excited to present our Superintendent Christine Fowler Mack. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. and welcome to the annual Akron State of the Schools address. You're probably thinking, State of the Schools. We're going to hear a 45-minute address from the superintendent. We're changing things up a little bit this year at the request of Ms. Fowler Mack and also the school district. As many of you are aware, she delivered an address to the Akron Roundtable just a few weeks ago, so we wanted to make this a more interactive session. Ms. Fowler Mack is going to deliver some opening remarks, then I'm going to have a chance to ask a few questions. And as with all events that we do at Akron Press Club, you're very much an important part of the conversation. We will be collecting your questions throughout the program, or I should say at a certain point in the program, and they will be brought up to me, and then I will go through them and deliver your questions to her as well. There are cards on your table where you can fill out your questions. I have been advised to let you know that you will probably see a white box on each of your tables. Do not put the questions in the box. This is a test. But at a certain point, our representatives and some of the students from Akron Public Schools will be going around and collecting your questions, and we'll have plenty of time for those questions as well. But without further ado, the first thing that we're going to do is turn the podium, the mic, over to Ms. Fowler Mack for some opening remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is wonderful to see so many of you, and especially very familiar faces, here to learn about the state of our Akron Public Schools. We'll see after we get through this if this was a great idea to do this a bit differently. But this is an important community conversation. This event provides a wonderful opportunity for me to not only to talk about our progress in the Akron Public Schools, but also our challenges. But more importantly, it also is an opportunity for me to answer your questions on behalf of our entire team. It's hard not to be excited about this conversation and excited about the work that is occurring in the Akron schools today, when the most important factor is actually here with us today, is our students. And so we were very excited to have students be able to join us and to be able to use the likeness of many of our real-life Akron Public School students who are with us around the side of the room. Can we please have a round of applause for the Ellet Jazz Ensemble to set the tone? Also, too, I hope you didn't scurry in and fail to notice our robotics students who were in the lobby area. It is delightful to see the reaction of so many of you who I saw stop at the table to observe the robotics in action, to see something that when you and I were younger probably seemed more like science fiction now taking place in many of our schools today. I am particularly grateful as well also to have our Scholar Board members in attendance here today. Would you please stand and be recognized to our Scholar Board members? Thank you. The direct involvement of our scholars in education planning is a testament to the value of the quality of schools in their lives and their future aspirations for our community. As a graduate of East High School and as a lifelong educator, I am proud to see the active involvement of our students, our families, and community partners in the school experience today at such a high level. And I look forward to engaging today in conversation about these and many other facets of the school experience that make the Akron Public Schools strong. I'd also like to take a minute to ask you, many of our other very important partners are not able to be here today because they're working. They're serving our students in the schools. They are our teachers, they are our staff members, but we do have a number of educators from the Akron Public Schools present here today. Would you also stand to be recognized, teachers, educators, central office administrators from the Akron Public Schools? Before I take my chair and begin the conversation, I want to also thank the board of the Akron Press Club and especially board president, Ms. Carla Davis, for all of your hard work in preparing for today and all that occurred behind the scenes to help us be ready to engage with the community. In attendance today are also very important members of our Akron Board of Education, our leaders. And so I'd also like our Board of Education to please stand and be recognized. We thank them for their dedicated service to children and families in Akron. Lastly, I'm grateful for the presence of so many friends, and my own personal family could not be here today. My mother is recovering from surgery, but they also pour their love into me and assist me in remaining focused, committed, and very optimistic in what many have entitled the most challenging era of public education. But despite that belief, again, I would say that the state of our schools is strong. The star-shaped thing that you have in front of you, you have a folder that sits in front of you, and it's star-shaped when you open it up, and hopefully you'll do so later. Calls attention to 5 points that I will be addressing today and weaving through some of my responses about the public schools. Each point on the star represents 5 commitments we have made in APS to better focus the work and to deepen our practice for even greater impact for each and every child. To achieve the goal, we are committed to high-quality teaching and learning and to developing and supporting our dedicated and hardworking teachers. Together, we provide supports for the whole child, whoever they are, and regardless of the challenges that they present or limitations that they may have. Together, we are finding new and creative ways to nurture and amplify the voices of our students. The role of active family and community engagement in student success also cannot be overstated, and I look forward today to taking some time to really talk about that important stance. I look forward to your questions and to those of the moderator. It is my hope that you will leave here today with a vision of the Akron Public Schools. What are the successes and what do we really have in the road ahead? And that you also will take the time to think about the ways in which you might be able to plug in. Again, the bookmarker that is available to you on your tables also have a QR code that reminds you that you too can play a part, whether small or large. There is a part to be played in ensuring the success of each of our schools and also our students. So with that said, I will sit down now and thank you again for being here. Thank you again for your hopes, wishes, and the ways in which you have engaged in the lives of our students. And I look forward to the conversation ahead.
All right, you kind of beat me to the punch in the first question. You answered the first part of it. It was going to be a pop quiz, which is fill in the blank. The state of the schools is, you said strong.
Yeah.
Part 2 is, what do you point to in saying that? How do we see that strength?
Yes, I think that we see that strength in the people. Each and every day, we have a very resilient staff and student body. And so our return rate after the pandemic was very high. We had some spotty issues due to the health issues with persons being in school on a steady basis. COVID was really real and impacting the district staff and students. But our attendance rates, our participation rates as staff members continue to improve daily. So with those types of engagement metrics, they're up. Our student achievement metrics, we just recently had our first report card that came about after the pandemic and after being back in school for a full year. And we saw improvements across the board. So we're not yet where we wish to be, but by every indication, there are improvements. As well, we have been spending quite a bit of time making sure that we are dialoguing with our students, dialoguing with our families, with staff members, just to better understand their experience. And the anecdotal stories, the feedback to explicit questions and surveys, things of that nature, also are an indication that we are in a strong place. And lastly, I'll say our academic program are used under the umbrella of our college and career academies. It continues to expand. Partners continue to come to the table. We continue to refine what it means to make sure that our students are career, college, and life ready. So using multiple indicators, I would say that we really are in a strong and improving state.
The pandemic hit everyone really hard. in students, we kept hearing about a number of different areas where they were greatly impacted. One of them was chronic absenteeism, and you're saying that you're starting to get a handle on that. Things are improving there. The other thing that we heard about throughout the pandemic, and again, not unique to Akron schools, but schools all across the country, were disciplinary issues with the students. I mean, they were at a loss. They were unanchored, untethered. Where is the district now when it comes to properly supporting the students, giving them the counseling that they need, correcting where we were going off course there?
I love the way you frame that question, and even your representation that really not only did we need to hold high expectations for our students, but that we needed to ensure that we were okay. We needed to also be sure that we were providing them with the necessary supports to take place. So I would say that for many of our students, we did see instances of inappropriate behaviors, and with our younger students, even tantruming at school. But when you think about it, for many of those children, they had not been in a school setting for an extended period of time. And for our earliest learners, much of the strategies to help them develop in self-regulation skills and to understand appropriate norms and expectations in schools did not occur. So at present, we have devoted additional staff to making sure that we can support our students, additional mental health services. We're working differently with families, and we're seeing improvement in those areas.
The students are one area of this. The other, of course, is the staff, the teachers, the support staff. I know that, like many other school districts around Ohio, around the country, that the district started the year not quite at staffing levels where they needed to be. How does the district stand at this point when it comes to both staffing levels, and what are you doing when it comes to teacher retention to ensure that in these tough times, the teachers aren't getting turned off by everything that's going on and just saying, I'm out?
Absolutely. And so I would say the honest response to that is that teacher retention, teacher recruitment is a priority for us. So it's something that we're working at. We, unlike many of the districts nationally, when I talk to my peers, many of them were experiencing large numbers of unfilled assignments, things of that nature. We weren't in that place. So we weren't fully staffed, so we did have some substitutes that had to be used at the start of the year, but not to the degree that we saw in other places. So more of our challenge was to ensure that we really are working with the staff that we have, and we have a really strong track record. We have over 40% of our teachers do have 16 or more years, in the system. So we have a staff that is experienced, and we want to make sure that retention then is a top priority. So attending to their wellness, their mental health, to make sure that we're adequately supporting them in growth and development as they are responding to students post the COVID era who have even a different set of needs becomes really important. But because of the experience level so broadly of our teaching forces in particular, when we think to the future, teacher shortages is going to be something we'll have to be very attentive to and strategic about.
The experience level of the teachers you have can help, but where is the district at this point when it comes to where it is in terms of staffing and where it needs to be?
We are predominantly staffed, so I would say when you think over 80% of our classrooms are staffed and staffed at appropriate levels.
One of the things I was struck by in your presentation a couple of weeks ago at Akron Roundtable was something you said about what we learned from the pandemic and not going back to where we were before the pandemic, not treating that as the normal, as what we wanted to get back to. What are the best things that we learned from the pandemic? What are the things that Akron Public Schools has taken from that and is charging ahead in changing the way in terms of how education is handled in the district?
Sure. Many of our curricular programs and sets of materials that we use have always had additional resources that allowed for a more personalized, differentiated pathway for students to learn. They had technology and enabled types of resources that may or may not have been used to a great degree. When we were in the situation where we weren't able to have the in-person interaction with our learners, we turned to a lot of those resources, and we found that in some instances, not all, that those resources were able to engage our students at an even higher level, and especially as we were looking to differentiate the different needs and interests of our students, were able to meet those needs as well. So I think we learned a lot from that period of time about how to add variety and choice to lessons. I think we learned how to use technology more capably, both in instruction and also in collaborating between adults, and in ensuring a wider reach of courses to students that may or may not be offered in one particular building. So it made us, I think, reflect on how we could be more adaptable and more personalized in our approach to teaching and learning.
Some of this is driven by resources. Resources often mean money.
Correct.
When it comes to the funding that has been put out there from the federal government during and post, I hope I'm saying post-pandemic,
yes,
but
we do.
at this point, what are the funding sources that you've been able to tap in, whether it's ARPA funding or other federal sources, and how can you clarify that for the audience here about where we can see that money tangibly being deployed in the district?
So when we think about some of the money that was deployed from the federal government as it relates to the post-pandemic goals of really ensuring adequate safety in the environment, we would say that many of those resources went into our physical plants. So they went into ensuring strong HVAC systems, and that there were improvements in the physical environments of students, PPE, making sure that that was available for our teachers. And actually, when we initially returned, really ensuring that we had the proper equipment to really space things out, again, for our physical and health safety. It also is seen today in terms of our ability to hire additional staff members. Prior to the pandemic, when we think about our staffing levels prior to the pandemic and our staffing levels today, we were able to hire about 50 more teachers because we had a commitment in a post-pandemic environment of wanting to ensure a smaller class size, especially for our elementary classrooms, knowing that the teachers would be navigating, accelerating learning, but also recouping learning loss, things of that nature. So additional staff is where you can see those dollars being spent, ensuring that we have full-time counselors in buildings, ensuring that we had instructional coaches who were able to work with adults and working with children as well. Those are many of the places where you can actually see dollars have been spent.
If a lot of those improvements were based on one-shots, infusions that may not recur, how do you ensure the sustainability of those hires, of those improvements in the education process in the Akron schools?
Right. You might imagine it is challenging. One of the approaches that we took in the Akron Public Schools, so myself coming in the door, David James before me because I entered in the course of the pandemic, working with our CFO and our assistant superintendent, we entered into thinking about these resources, knowing they were one-time dollars, but thinking about what would we want to be true for the long term. So we do have some plans to think about sustainability. We do believe it's important to continue some of the other ways in which we've spent the resources on summer learning programs and making sure there are additional clubs, activities, and experiences for our students. There are some bets that we placed that when we modeled out our budgets, we want it to be true longer term. So we've entered thinking about sustainability, but with that in mind, not everything that we are able to invest in at this point will be able to remain longer term.
These are, to put it lightly, particularly politically fraught times.
Yes.
A lot of unfounded accusations about CRT being taught in K through 12 schools. Legislation in various states being proposed by legislatures on athletics and gender, specifically focusing transgender students. This is a time where it's particularly tough, I would imagine, for both students and teachers who must feel like they're potentially under assault for just doing what they're doing, learning what they're learning. What's your message to the teachers and the students with this swirl that's going on around them in this country?
I think one of the things that not only I, but the Board of Education, all of our leaders throughout the system can do best is to attempt to shield our teachers, our students from so much of the disruption, so much of the challenging dialogue that's occurring in the outside. I think what we must do is continue to tell our story about the many promising practices that are occurring in our schools each and every day. We need to tell our stories about children who come with a range of experiences, a range of needs, yet are thriving today. We need to tell the stories of our partners who are finding meaningful ways to connect in to the academic programs and or to make accessible their real life work places for our students and for our teachers to be able to reinforce those applications. I won't, shy away from the fact that it is challenging. It is very, very challenging in this day and time to be an educator in a space, especially where you are having to combat things that really are not true, things that really aren't a part of the priorities of the system at this time.
For the teachers who are up against burnout,
Right.
What concrete steps do you take to insulate them as best you can against this and to ensure that they're not going to burn out because this is the final thing that pushes them over the edge?
Right. I wish I had the magic dust that I could guarantee that we are able to truly shield teachers from all stress. We cannot do that. We can build in ways that we can help them renew. We can listen to them. We can be responsive to what it is that they need. But we also do represent their voice. And so we represent their voice with legislators, we represent their voice with the community, we give them support so that they also can be actively engaged in the lives of, really in the discourse, but also really in the life of the district as well. And so we've been meeting and working to offer many more opportunities to promote wellness and to ensure mental health services, reminding them of things that are a part of our benefit packages, revisiting some of the things we used to do when life was, a bit slower. So ways in which we would convene and engage together through wellness programs in the system. So not everything that we're coming up with is brand new, but it really is, there's a greater intentionality into saying we want to be able to support our educators and to be able to take things off their plate. So one of the other ways I think we can be effective in that is working from a set of priorities and ensuring that they aren't bogged down with things that can be done for them or things that just aren't a priority at a particular time.
Just a reminder, in about 10 minutes, we're going to be taking your questions and putting them to Ms. Fowler Mack. So if you have questions, start writing them out and get ready to send them our way. Another issue of politics. I imagine there are people in the audience who are wondering about your relations with the Board of Education. A couple of members were quite blunt in evaluating you at your 1 year on the job mark. Akron City Council subsequently passed a resolution showing you your support. Is this a distraction that we just need to move on from? Have things been settled with the board? Are you guys on better terms now?
We are on good terms, and I would just say, as a educator, we always have been, through our experiences, used to feedback, used to varying opinions, things of that nature, and used to using that to grow. And so I am one, I welcome feedback, not only from my bosses, but I'm one that seeks feedback from those I work with, things of that nature, and we move on. We are very committed. It's a talented group of leaders, and together we are very committed to the goals and objectives of our district in supporting each of our stakeholders, and that's where our focus is. So yes, for the broader public, I would say absolutely move on. We have work to do, and that is where our focus is.
You've been superintendent for the district now for just over a year. You cited your predecessor, David James, who had the job for about a dozen years. What would you say has been the single biggest challenge that you have faced in the year plus now since you took the position as superintendent?
Well, I think my single biggest challenge I think was a part of the time in which I entered. So I entered when we were returning fully to in-person instruction, and that coupled with it was the time of transition for many highly experienced members of our team, made it just a kind of recipe for a greater challenge. So we had not only David James, who transitioned, the assistant superintendent had 33 years and was transitioning at the same time. So I would say learning quickly then to get up to speed with the work of the district, the needs of the district, and then to discover within that process that we have some work to do, especially around our legacy buildings in the district. So to be able to not only address some of the academic needs, which I fully expected, but also some of the physical plant types of needs that needed a strategy was also really challenging. But I will say that our staff at large has been extremely, and our community has been extremely welcoming and supportive. There isn't a day that goes by when I don't run into someone in this community that doesn't ask the question, how can I be helpful? Whether it's a parent, whether it is a leader in the community. So I really believe that Akron sees its schools and the state of education as a major priority and has been acting accordingly. So as a leader, I have felt extremely supported in a challenging set of circumstances.
You mentioned the legacy buildings, and you actually teed up my next question, which has to do with the building binge, which is a good thing that the school district has been in a number of new school buildings, most recently the ribbon cutting on Garfield, CLC. A number of new buildings, a number of other buildings have been renovated, brought up to modern standards. But if I'm not mistaken, Garfield is probably the last new building that we're going to see in the district for a while. Big pot of money that was tapped into to make that all reality. So you mentioned the legacy buildings that still need to be addressed. What's the scope and where's the money going to come from to deal with that?
Right, and so one of the things that we've done is that is one of the things that we're working through. The board was already in the process as I entered in really thinking about a long-term plan for the district that included not only taking the opportunity to step back and think about all of its programs and opportunities to make sure that it was accessible for all of our students in an equitable way, but also to really focus on the facilities themselves. So there are 11, what we affectionately call our legacy facilities that house some of our innovative programs that we started over the years. So Miller South, for instance, our STEM schools, those are types of schools that are in more legacy buildings than our CLCs. And so we're planning for that because within the course of really auditing all of the information that is available to us, we also do have information that says that as we make those decisions, we also might want to look at the disparities in our clusters, where some of our clusters are more full and are using capacity in facilities at higher levels than others. So I'm not really sure where the dollars will come from at this moment to address all of those needs, but we hope to package plans in a way and with the community, with input, so that we are figuring that out together.
Follow up on that. I was looking at school stats earlier this morning. I believe the enrollment is around 20,000 students for the district.
It is.
Are we looking at the potential of having to close more schools, consolidate more schools in the coming years?
I'm not sure. So right now we are we're asking ourselves those very questions, and it could be that becomes a reality. It's one of the solutions that might solve some of the challenges we face, but where it's a bit premature to declare any actions for sure.
One last question for me, and then I'll start to go through these.
Okay.
Next year is an election year in
is.
Akron. There will be a new mayor. Mayor Horgan is here with us today. What has he helped with you in your first year, and what is going to be most helpful for you from the next mayor for Akron?
Sure. I think one of the things that the mayor has done for me and for the schools thus far is really he has demonstrated through action, demonstrated through his regular talking language that education is a priority. He has, with his own staff, created a partnership with one of our schools to make sure that we do have those relevant experiences. So he's modeling what it is that we are asking of our leaders. As a new leader coming into a community, he was very gracious in sharing with me perspective and information and in opening doors to bridge me to other leaders within the community. So I have viewed his leadership, not only has it been visionary, but he has been a source of support for our schools and for me personally. And what was part B of your question?
The next mayor.
Yes.
What do you want from the next mayor?
The same thing.
Okay, as promised, it's time for your questions. I'm going to start off with one that's not a question, but just a little bit of love from the audience.
Okay.
You've joined our organization at the most difficult time post-COVID. Thank you for taking that leap and believing what we can do if we work together as a family. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now the harder questions.
Okay.
Will you please update us on a possible teacher strike timeline ? If there is a strike, what does the school day look like for our students?
Well, Because of the conversations that we're in right now, we are currently still in negotiations with our teachers, and I am optimistic. I remain very, very optimistic that we are going to be able to arrive at a contract that is fair to adults and is great for our children. So I have no updates about a timeline or anything of that nature. I think we all take very seriously the needs of our students. And so we will do everything in our power to ensure that our students are able to continue moving forward. It's been a challenging few years, but I have every faith that we will work together with our teachers.
When's the contract up?
It is up this year, so
Okay.
yes.
Next question. We're struggling with behaviors on our buses, which is a challenge for our bus drivers. Are there any current conversations, or can there be, to have a staff member on bus routes to help hold our students accountable?
Sure, and I would say that we have been working with not only the union leadership, but also the transportation department on a regular basis for the few students, because it is not the majority of students, but the few students who do misbehave on buses. There have been instances where we have added additional staff to ride the buses. Our principals have also ridden routes to ensure that we are able to follow up right away. We are working with families. We have added cameras on several of our buses so that we're able to respond. So we are continually, actively working the problem, but we have not allocated ongoing dedicated staff for buses.
Discipline is real. How are you deciphering between the disciplinary infractions and incidents that are given as a result of implicit bias?
Right, and you might imagine that to be able to say that I know for sure a discipline incident is tied to implicit bias is challenging, and I'm not sure that there are many who could do that with certainty and with accuracy. I think one of the things that we are doing effectively is we're really paying close attention to our discipline trends. We're trying to ensure that we are norming those trends in terms of data that you would see in like districts to make sure that we have more of an indication of if our data is skewed for any particular reason. So we do have an actively engaged group of educators working on that. It's something that I do personally see and touch and engage with. I do believe that we have to hold our students accountable for good behavior. We also have to ensure that discipline is restorative, that it's correct, it's a form of correction, and that it is being applied in equitable ways.
Are you seeing more violence and acute behavioral health issues being exhibited in students following the pandemic? If so, what's been the response from the district?
Yeah, I would say that we do believe that the types of behaviors and mental health needs is more acute post the pandemic, and we see that, and I think we are like many other school districts across our county, across our state and nation that would say that that is true. Towards that end, we've developed a series of strategies. We're offering professional development differently. We've added roles in the culture climate areas of our building, and again, mental health services. We've partnered with many different organizations because we know that education is something, it's a process that we in the district cannot do alone. So we've really interacted with a number of providers and agencies who can also work with us, that are some of which that are embedded in our schools to provide those services for our students.
What are the supports that are available to students and their families who are dealing with traumas like homelessness and poverty?
We have a very strong, actually last week at our board meeting, we highlighted our Project Rise, which is a program and set of services available to students experiencing homelessness. It was interesting and I think alarming to know that of our student body, nearly 2,000 and sometimes 2,000 plus students are homeless in any given year, meaning they don't have a steady home to go to. Some are doubled up, living with other relatives, things of that nature.
2,000 students, that's 10%
It is.
of your students.
It is, and it's challenging. One of the wonderful things, though, is our sets of services have been so normalized and are accessible through all of our schools and through our family resource centers, because throughout our city, we do have 4 different family resource centers where families know that they can receive support services while they're going through that period of time. So I would say we are very responsive. We are proactive in watching our students to make sure that they have everything that they need.
Question here about HB 616. How do you feel about it? It's for those who aren't aware, it's legislation that's been proposed that would prohibit diversity, equity, and inclusion learning outcomes, among other things.
I think that for those, of course, we in our district, one of our priorities and really a foundational priority in our district is to really focus on equity and to address issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that goes against, things that we value in the Akron Public Schools. I would say that oftentimes when I'm talking to laypersons, when I'm talking to persons with divergent opinions, there's usually a lot of misunderstandings about what types of supports are available for students, what it looks like in terms of some of the social emotional learning lessons that are occurring within our school environment, some of the routines and practices. And so I would say it is our responsibility as a field, as a community, to continue to talk to our legislators, to continue to speak to our values. In the Akron Public Schools, available, I believe, on the table, we've really taken the time to be explicit about our commitment to excellence through equity. And so it is something that hopefully, as others debate in Columbus, we can lead the way here locally.
A couple of questions here concerning LGBTQ students. How does the school district support them?
Right, and so we have within that value of equity, we have a really strong commitment to making sure that each of our students is seen, heard, valued, has a sense of belonging. And so we are willing and able to be adaptive to meeting the needs of each of our students. So we have always had practices in our schools and in working with our building principals and our staff members at large, where we're able to meet with families and really to determine personalized ways to make sure that their student is fully seen in ways that are affirming to who they are.
This question starts out, it takes a community to raise a successful student.
It does.
What would you envision as the ideal community support system for your students in the after-school hours to build on in-school success?
No, absolutely. I would say in the after-school hours, we want each of our students to be able to have a wide range of opportunities available to them, whether it's that they're pursuing their talents in the athletic realm, if they are taking risk and exploring new opportunities artistically or through other programs, we first and foremost want to be sure that there are programs available and that they are accessible throughout all of our clusters. And so there is a range of those types of programs and opportunities that are designed and offered by the school system. But again, there are a range of those types of opportunities that are available through our community assets and the community programming. And so what we're seeking to do is to braid that, to really make sure that we are working together to make those opportunities known to our students and our families, and to make sure that each student has something available that relates to their needs, interest, that sort of thing.
There's a second part to the question.
Sure.
How can your community partners step up to further help?
Get involved. If you cannot sit in this room and think just off the top of your head of one or two ways in which you feel personally connected to students within our community, to some aspect of supporting them, I would say then you need to ask more questions about ways in which you can get involved. And again, I made mention of the bookmark that's available on the table. It is a start to offering some ideas about ways in which you might play that part. And for some of you, it might be a face-to-face engagement. For others of you, it might be that you're providing something that our schools or sets of students need. There's always a way, big or small, that you can connect in. And education really is a community responsibility.
This question begins, as a taxpayer in Akron, could you please explain the money that's spent at the central office level and not within the schools?
Right. One of the things we did in the course of last year felt like a blur from the standpoint of there were quite a few audits and opportunities to learn occurring. So one of the things we did a financial resource audit where we looked at funds and where they were flowing. And one of the things we were able to benchmark is the fact that our system, and this didn't just begin, this is something that has been underway and has been steadily improving, is that the percentage of dollars that flow to buildings and flow directly to students is a majority of resource. We also looked at, what percentage of funds are at the central office being used to support central administration roles and things of that nature. And we are well within the norm for districts our size. So we are leaner than most with that regard, differently than making sure our proportion of funds is supporting building-based budgets and building-based staff and administration at that level. And then also we went further to take a look at the resources as it relates to the amount of dollars being spent on instruction versus other operational types of things, and found that we really are living out our values to say that teaching and learning and making sure that resources support that is a priority in our system. So things that monies go for in central office are sometimes some of the professional development services that then support our school buildings. There are distinct roles that support different functions of the organization, whether it be safety and security functions, operational functions, in academics, things of that nature. But again, we do have a commitment to remain responsible and to make sure that our priority is to be able to put more of our resources at the building level, which is closest to where teaching and learning is occurring.
We have about 4 minutes left here.
Okay.
We'll see how many more questions we can get through. The chamber
It's highlighted the equity gaps in our city regarding workforce opportunities. What is the district doing to close those equity gaps within the district?
So one of the things that we're doing to close the equity gaps is to work with those employers, first and foremost, to understand better their needs and to begin to bridge our students earlier through experiences within our college and career academies, so that there is more of a seamless transition into the workforce for students, especially that are going directly into the workforce versus enlisting or maybe furthering their education. One of the things we've challenged the workforce to do, though, is to make sure that as they are engaging with our students, that they are exposing them to the full pathway, because we don't just want our students to satisfy and address entry-level work needs of the community, but we want them to be able to see themselves through the pathways so that they can matriculate to becoming the future leaders of our community that we know that they can be.
What are your thoughts about universal pre-K?
I'm for it. I love it. I would champion it, and I hope many in this room would champion that as well. We need our students early on to be actively engaged in the educational process. We need them not just to be challenging them right out the gate in the areas of literacy and math and things of that nature, but again, nurturing them around all of those other skills that we know are so important. The ability to think critically, the abilities to start even early on testing their voices and developing that agency, that they have a purpose and a sense in the world, that they really, we can build those relationships too with families even at an earlier time. So universal pre-K is one of those places that I feel is very important. There's research behind it, as we saw for some of the other challenges we face, like even some excess space needs in our schools and throughout the city. It might be that we can really think about how to purposefully use those environments for things like more universal pre-K offerings.
So what will it take to move towards it?
I think it takes a plan, and not a plan that requires us to be able to solve the entire challenge, but a plan and a commitment to continue to move forward. So even if we set a goal at just increasing the number of seats available in our community by 500 or by 800 students, it gives us a way to begin to move forward. And again, as we're looking at our long-term operational plan and thinking about not only how to solve some of the challenges and how to improve upon with each given year our set of academic program we offer in the district, we also want to make sure that we can add to that plate.
One last question. Just a quick response, hopefully, on this one, since we are just at 1 o'clock.
We are.
But a question here, would it be possible to host a State of the Schools on a day off after the school day is over, so our teachers, custodians, students, et cetera, would be able to participate?
Whoever wrote that, I actually had that very same thought, because I do. I think, this is a time of reflection, and it's a time to share about the work being done in the district, and it would be wonderful to have that at a time where many more of the stakeholders who are up close, personal, doing the work, who are passionate about our students, that they could be engaged to be present. So I agree.
So the last follow-up here, it'll be another year till we get to the next State of the Schools,
Yes.
possibly, if not sooner.
Yeah.
In the in-between times, somebody has an idea. They want to share a piece of their mind. They want to say something nice. How do they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. We do have ways on our website that you can interact with the district. And one of the things is we're listening, we're responding, our board listens, our administrative team does as well. So please, there are ways on the website that will allow you to connect with us and to share ideas. Here today, again, those white boxes weren't meant to capture your questions from me in this forum, but are meant for you to, even before you leave here today, take an opportunity to jot down an idea you have, some piece of feedback, and we will be using that. We will be looking at those as well.
Akron Public Schools Superintendent Christine Fowler Mack, thank you so much for
Thank
this
you.
year's Day of the Schools.
Superintendent Mack, thank you so much for the time that you've spent today with the Akron Press Club. Thank you, Andrew Meyer, for moderating today's program. Thank you, audience, for attending this forum. We hope to do it again in the very near future. And if you would like to know more about Press Club events, please visit the Akron Press Club website. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.